Okay, welcome in. I'm now going to be previewing week 4 of the NFL season. I can't believe we're already a month into the NFL season. Time just surely flies by, to say the least. So, starting in New York, as the New York Football Giants, who got their first win of the season in week number 3, are sitting at 1-2. The Cowboys have the exact same record after losing 2 consecutive games. This is a coin flip for me because the Cowboys did not look like themselves last week, and for the Giants, they proved everybody, including myself, wrong, and they got their first win of the season in Cleveland in week number 3. So there's a lot riding for both these squads. Neither team wants to start 1-3. Best case scenario, they get a tie and they're both 1-2-1. But obviously, both these teams would love to beat each other. This one, I'm on the fence. I could just flip a coin. No team really has the momentum going into this game. Just because in recent years the Cowboys have had the Giants number, I'm going to go with the Cowboys in this matchup. Otherwise, if the Giants win, I wouldn't be surprised because if they can play like they did against Cleveland against the Cowboys, they do have a chance. But if they don't show up like they did weeks 1 and 2, I believe the Cowboys probably will get the victory in this one. So I will force an away victory, and we'll see how I do after week number 2 is finished. Alrighty, another NFC rival game as the Atlanta Falcons are taking on the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are sitting at 2-1. The Atlanta Falcons are sitting at 1-2. I believe after the last week's loss, the Saints are probably wanting to get back in the win column. And if you're a Falcons fan, you would love nothing more than to defeat your NFC South foe and even your record up at 2-2 respectively. But I'm going to give the edge to the Saints in this one. I picked a lot of away teams for week number 4. We'll see how I do at the end of the weekend. So the next one has the Chicago Bears, who are sitting at 1-2, taking on the 1-2 Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to give the edge to the Rams in this one. They finally got their first win last week against the San Francisco 49ers. And despite the fact they're playing on the road in Chicago, for me, the Bears have a lot to prove. Caleb Williams, even though he was the first overall pick, still isn't looking like a superstar. I mean, I'm sure it's going to take time. You're never going to be perfect, especially when you're in your rookie season. But I think there's definitely going to be some bumps along the road. And I truly believe that if I had to put my money on it, that Matt Stafford should get the victory in Chicago, evening up the Los Angeles Rams record at 2-2. The Minnesota Vikings are heading into Green Bay. Seems like there's a lot of divisional matchups, and you really can't go wrong with divisional matchups. The Minnesota Vikings are still perfect on the season. They are sitting at 3-0. For the Packers, they're sitting at 2-1. I want so desperately to give the edge to the Packers, but after watching Sam Darnold dial it up last week and obliterate the Houston Texans defense, it's hard to bet against the guy. So I'm going to be a little bold and give the edge to the Minnesota Vikings. Finally, a non-divisional matchup as the Indianapolis Colts, who finally got their first win of the season, are taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I'm not mistaken, I think Joe Flacco is getting the starting nod, even though the Colts won last week. And I believe he'll be going up against Justin Fields for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really want to give the edge to the Colts, but every time I bet against the Steelers, I always tend to get burned. So I will predict the Steelers stay perfect on the season, and they leave Indy with a W. Off to New York as the Jets, who are sitting at 2-1, are taking on the 1-2 Broncos. Even though the Broncos have an elite defense, I believe it's been like 3 consecutive games where they've let 20 points or less. And normally if you let less than 20 points or around 20 points, you normally have a chance to win the game. But because their offense has been so mediocre over the last almost decade, you could say, it's hard for me to really get hype. I love Bo Nix. He will be he is our franchise quarterback, but I don't know how much faith I have in him. I want so badly for them to win against the Jets, especially since New York went into Denver last year and won. But there's just something about this Jets team, and obviously when you have a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers at the helm, as long as he can stay healthy, he can be very efficient. So I will give the edge to the New York Jets against the Denver Broncos. Alrighty, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Both these teams are sitting at 2-1 respectively. The Eagles won last week. The Buccaneers lost. So obviously for Tampa Bay, they don't want to have 2 straight home losses. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, they put on a clinic against the Saints, only giving up 12 points. If their defense can show up in Tampa, I believe they have a chance. And I am going to be bold and say that Philadelphia pulls off a Week 4 victory in Florida. Alrighty. Definitely a must-watch game as the Carolina Panthers, who are still winless, not winless, they're now sitting at 1-2, are taking on the winless Cincinnati Bengals. Who would have guessed going into Week 4, Cincy would be the team that is winless in this matchup? I never would have guessed that, considering I picked Cincinnati to win almost the last 3 weeks, and I've still gotten burned. I'm going to be bold. I say the Panthers get this one. I really think that Cincinnati has a lot to prove, and if Sam Darnold, not Sam Darnold, but Andy Dalton can play as good as he did last week, I believe the Panthers have a shot at evening up the record at 2-2. Now, Joe Burrow could go beast mode and pull off a huge win in Carolina, which he should, because him and Jamar Chase are a dynamic quarterback and wide receiver duo, but unfortunately, they have not made magic this season. Will it happen? It very well should. It very well could. But because they're still winless, it's hard for me to pick a team that's still struggling to get a W in the season. So I am going to be bold and say the Panthers even up the record at 2-2. Alrighty, a battle in the AFC South as the Houston Texans are taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Houston sitting at 2-1 after a Week 3 loss. Jaguars are still winless on the season. I'm going to give the edge to Houston. For me, it's hard for me to go for Jacksonville, considering they've been so inconsistent. And I'm pretty sure I said this in my last video, that the last time the Jaguars won a football game was Week 12 of last year. So heading into this matchup, they're looking at possibly 9 straight games without a victory. Now, can they go into Houston and get a win? They should. They have Trevor Lawrence. He's a great quarterback. They have Doug Peterson, who's a great coach. But unfortunately, they haven't been able to win in well over a 2-month period schedule when it comes to the NFL season. So I have no choice. I'm going to give the edge to the home team. I believe CJ Stroud comes back home, has a better game than he did in week number 3, and they should get the win, and they should be 3-1. Alrighty, the Washington Commanders are in Arizona. For Washington, they're sitting at 2-1. The Arizona Cardinals are 1-2. I'll just put it this way. If Washington can play the way they did against the Cincinnati Bengals, if they can put up 30-plus points, they definitely have a chance against Arizona. Now, if Arizona's D happens to show up and they limit Washington to like 15 to 20 points, obviously Arizona has a chance in this one. But I'm going to be a little bold and say that Washington gets another victory. And you can tell I've been picking a lot of away teams for some reason. I just feel a little bold and a little risque. But there's a lot of away teams that I believe can win in week number 4. Alrighty, the San Francisco 49ers are taking on the New England Patriots. Both these teams are sitting at 1-2. For the Patriots, I'm not really surprised because they are kind of like in like a rebuild. They don't really have the team that they did for like 2 decades when Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were at the helm. Gerard Mayo is now the new head coach. I'm sure at some point they will be competitive, but there's a lot of good teams in the AFC, and you still got the Jets and the Bills in the AFC East now that the Dolphins are kind of falling off the map since Tua left. So there's a chance the Patriots could finish 3rd in that division, but I don't see them getting 2nd or 1st. I just believe the Bills and the Jets should be competitive in that division, so I don't think it's going to be a very successful year for the Patriots. And as for the 49ers, they need this victory. They just need this victory. I believe they were Super Bowl favorites heading into the season, and if they drop to 1-3, that's really going to hurt their chances, considering the Seahawks are 3-0. So if Seattle happens to win in week 4 and the 49ers happen to lose in week 4, they'll be 3 games behind them. And it's hard to play catch-up. It's not impossible, but it's very hard to play catch-up in this league, especially when you're basically a quarter of the way done this season. Alrighty, the Las Vegas Raiders are taking on the Cleveland Browns. Both these teams are sitting at 1-2. Both these teams had home losses, very upsetting to say the least for both squads, respectively. I'm going to give the edge to the Browns in this one. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I hate the Raiders. I'm a Broncos fan. I'd never want to root for any other team in the AFC West except for Denver. But neither team has really shown me that they are a super team. For Vegas, they're trying to get over that hump and get back into the postseason. Yes, they did technically make it 2 years ago, but for a team that has a lot of talent, they haven't really shown it. And for Cleveland, same thing. They got a lot of talent, but it's been very inconsistent. And again, this is definitely a coin flip. You could go either way. Vegas could easily get a victory, but I'm going to be a little bold and say that Deshaun Watson plays a fairly good game and the Browns squeak out a victory against the Las Vegas Raiders. Alrighty, an AFC West matchup as the Los Angeles Chargers, who lost, they're now 2-1, taking on the still undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. I have no choice but to go with the Chiefs. I can't stand them, and I can't. If honestly, if every AFC West opponent with the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Raiders, if they all tied, that'd be fantastic. And then the Broncos could win against them, that'd be even better. But that's a dream world. That's definitely a pipe dream. But when you have Patrick Mahomes at the helm, doesn't matter who he has for receivers, who he has for running back. The guy is a magician, and he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. I believe he's 2-time MVP. He's won the MVP at least once, but the guy is just unreal. And they very well could three-peat, and they very well could get 4 championships in like 6 years. But yeah, it's hard for me to bet against the Chiefs when they've been so dominant. If the Chargers won, it'd be nice, but again, these two teams are in the same division as Denver, so I really can't root for either one. But if I had to put money on either team, it's probably safe to bet that the Chiefs should win. The Sunday night matchup should be a very intriguing one as the Baltimore Ravens, who finally got their first win of the season, they're now sitting at 1-2, are taking on the still undefeated Buffalo Bills. I'm going to give the edge to the Bills. They just seem like they are a very good team. I mean, for the past 4 years, they've been very good, and they've been basically Super Bowl or bust. Unfortunately, they have not been able to get to the big dance. Can this be the year that Buffalo finally gets to the Super Bowl and finally wins the Super Bowl? If you're not familiar, they went to like 4 Super Bowls in the 90s in a row and lost every single one. So I'm sure if you're a diehard Bills fan, and especially if you're alive and watched your team suffer those 4 horrendous losses in the Super Bowl, you would love nothing more than to see them get back into that big dance while they're still in competitive mode, if that makes any sense. Now, the Ravens should win, and especially after a big win in Dallas, and now that they're back home, they should win, and they very well could win. But again, I'm just being a little bold, and like I said earlier, I think there's a lot of teams that are playing away from home that can secure a W. There must be a common theme because for the last 2, I believe, or 3 straight Monday nights, or maybe even 4 straight Monday nights, there have been 2 games. So if this is a regular routine, then fantastic. Just means more football to watch. The Miami Dolphins are taking on the Tennessee Titans. Miami sitting at 1-2. The Titans are still 0-3. Despite the fact that the Titans are still winless, I think they'd come away with a victory in Miami. I honestly do. If Will Levi can not be a fumble machine and be a little bit more consistent, I believe Tennessee can possibly go into Miami and pull off an upset. I mean, the Dolphins only got 3 points last week against the Seahawks, and I'm not saying the Titans defense is just as good as the Seahawks, but I mean, without Tua in the lineup, Miami, they're really going to struggle this season. And if he doesn't come back anytime soon and they go on a losing streak, their chances of making the playoffs are going to be slimmer and slimmer week by week. And it's crazy because at the start of the season, they probably were a favorite to win the AFC East. Now they're technically 2 games behind. But if they lose this and Buffalo happens to win, they're 3 games behind. And just like I talked about with the other matchup, it's tough. Not impossible, but very tough to climb that mountain. So I think Tennessee goes into Miami and pulls off a win against the Dolphins. And the last game takes place in Detroit as they're playing against the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are still undefeated. The Detroit Lions are 2-1. I think the Lions get the victory at home, and they finally end the Seahawks' perfect season. So out of all the 16 games on tap, I have one. Oh, I forgot to pick San Fran. And this one, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 5 out of the 6 teams that are home, I think, will win, whereas I think 11 possibly could go into and the other teams burn, and pull off a victory. So again, a lot of bold picks. We'll see how they work, and yeah, we'll see how I do by the end of Monday night. I will try to have a video uploaded by Tuesday for my review for week number 4. And if I go below 500, then I know I was a little crazy with these picks. But again, you only live once, and we'll see how I do. So just to recap, heading into week number 4, I was sitting at 35-13. Now, if I go 0-16, obviously I'll be below 500. Or no, I'll still be above 500, but I'm hoping to try and maintain an above 500 average throughout the season. Alrighty, as always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.